Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Job Skills Statistics webinar. It's a great pleasure to welcome you. This event is also a celebration to mark the European Statistics Day, which was recently celebrated, and the European Year of Skills. I'm John Berinder from Eurostat, and I'll be moderating the event. We've got quite a number of colleagues who will join us during this event, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. In terms of questions and answers, you're very welcome to enter any questions that you may have in Slido. So you'll need to go to slido.com, and you'll see on the screen here the code you have to enter if you want to start putting in questions. So it's hash 1971066. So without further ado, I'd like to get into the webinar and very much welcome Christine Weerts from Eurostat, who will be the first presenter. Christine, please.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. I'm Christine Weerts, the Director for Social Statistics here in Eurostat, and I'm happy you are all here with us. 2003 is the year of the European Year of Skills, and it aims at helping people to get the right skills for quality jobs, and it supports companies in addressing skill shortages in Europe. It pushes for a fresh impetus for lifelong learning, for empowering people and companies to contribute to green and digital transitions, as well as supporting innovation and competitiveness. While the newer and developing skills, and in particular digital skills, are clearly needed for the daily life of many EU citizens, measuring the different aspects related to skills is complex and it involves many different areas. Indeed, it concerns both the professional and the personal life. And in the professional domain, it concerns training and learning new skills for people, and those are actually the workers when we speak about skills for the labor market, the skills that are supplied by the workers. And on the other side, we have the skills demanded by the business. The companies have vacant jobs, posts, and for this they require specific skills. The measurement of skills and their development is consequently multifaceted, and in the labor market domain, the subject of this webinar, where we cover various sources of European official statistics. And these are first the European Labour Force Survey, which looks at the supply side. It looks at the people that are on the labor market, and also those which look out for the labor market. And it should be noted here that for this data source, in the context of the European Year of Skills, we had a special set of questions on job skills that was asked to people in 2022, and the results were published recently. Then we also have job vacancy statistics and data related to job advertisements, and in that sense, the skills that are demanded from the enterprises. So far on the labor market. Moreover, when we look in particular at digital skills, the border between purely professional skills and those that the persons need in general for their daily life is very narrow. And the data from the General Population Survey on Information and Communications Technology, what we call the ICT survey, provides insights to assess the situation and the evolution in Europe. Consequently, today we would like to present you a set of statistical results from different sources that I just mentioned: the EU Labour Force Survey, job vacancy statistics and job advertisements, and the ICT Household Survey. But before this, and in order to have a better view of the policy context at EU level, Julie Yonda from DG Employment and Social Affairs will explain the data needs from the policymaker side in this domain. And I'm looking forward for all of us to have an informative webinar. Over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, for your introduction. And now, as you said, Christine, I'll move on to Julie Fionda from the Commission DG for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. Julie, please.
Thanks. Thanks for asking me to join, and good morning to everybody from a grey and rainy Brussels. So I said my name is Julie Fionda, and I work in the unit which is responsible for coordination of the European Skills Agenda, and also for coordination of the European Year of Skills. So we're a rather busy unit, and focus very much on the topics of discussion today. We are also in our unit, but also in DG Employment in particular, we are big consumers of the data that Eurostat and the national statistical offices generate. And we also perhaps help to shape the type of data that's collected and its analysis. I think for us, we can't understate the importance of statistical data, I think, in developing evidence-based policy. Statistical data is essential in the policy process at the EU level, and maybe I'll mention four areas. Firstly, for highlighting political priorities and for setting common indicators and targets. I think here of the skills agenda, adult learning, digital skills, social pillar. Secondly, for carrying out country-specific analysis and to compile country-specific recommendations also, here in the context of processes such as the European semester and the joint employment report. Thirdly, it's also important for us in terms of tracking investment and investment gaps. And this is perhaps a little bit more of an emerging and developing field, but also we're very much looking forward to a quick rollout of the satellite account on education and training, which I think will be much anticipated from our side and from the member states, and I think that will be a very useful development. And perhaps fourthly and lastly on this front, the monitoring of emerging issues as well. I think platform work, automation, and this has also been in particular an inspiration in terms of the job skills module in the LFS. So I think from my side, I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today. I hope to learn a lot, and I think just good luck for a good session. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Julie, for your policy background. And indeed, we'll now move into a series of colleagues from Eurostat who will take us into the details of job skills statistics. So I'd like to introduce first Dilian Antasov. Dilian, please go ahead with your presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello to everybody. To introduce myself, I'm Dilian, and I'll be with you for the next 4 to 5 slides. So to begin with, I would like to highlight that at Eurostat, we do not subject people to formal math or language tests to assess their level of skills. Instead, we rely on various approximations. For employed people, we may consider type of occupation, level of education, and the field of that education to analyze their skills. This will be namely the topic of my presentation. The data I'm going to show is from the Labor Force Survey, which is the larger sample survey among households and individuals in the EU. I'll focus on the age group 25 to 74, which is the reference age for the educational attainment statistics, thus avoiding the inclusion of younger people who may not have completed yet their studies. So you already see my first actual slide. Here we are presented with a map showing the proportion of people who work as managers, professionals, or technicians and associate professionals. Those groups of professions typically demand a high level of skills. The 2022 data revealed that across the EU, 44% of the employed population belong to this group of highly skilled employment. Looking at individual EU countries, we see very large variations. Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania demonstrated proportions below 35%, indicating relatively smaller share of highly skilled employment in their overall employment. On the opposite end, 55% or more of employed people in Luxembourg, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Denmark were categorized as highly skilled based on the type of their occupation. Interestingly, in the group of managers, women represent only around 1/3. Respectively, men account for the majority, for the 2/3. At the same time, the other two groups, professionals and technicians and associate professionals, exhibit more balanced men to women distribution. We can move on to the next slide. Here we look at the skews through the viewpoint of the level of education. In the first figure on the left, we present the trend in the number of employed people in the EU by their educational attainment level. At a first glance, a significant upward trajectory can be seen for those with tertiary education. Their numbers have grown from 53 million in 2012 to 72 million in 2022. This marks a substantial increase of 36% over this decade. Conversely, there was a decline of 15% in the number of people with a low level of education. Finally, the most populous group, people with a medium level of education, remained relatively stable in their numbers over the 10-year period considered on the left graph. On the right side, we focus on the 2022 situation. Firstly, we counted 100 million employed men and 8,600 employed women in the EU. Within those two groups can be seen very distinct pattern in terms of education. We see that people with tertiary education had larger proportion within female employment than within male employment. They represented 44% among women, whereas 35% among men. On the other hand, those holding medium vocational level of education represented larger share among men than among women, namely 39% for men and 33% for women. On the next slide, please. Here we examine the specific fields of education for people having a tertiary degree. Again, data are at EU level. On the left side, we have the distribution by labor status within the various fields of education. On the right, we show the men-women split within those fields. The lowest percentages of employment at the bottom of the graph were recorded among people who have graduated in the fields of natural sciences, mathematics and statistics, in arts and humanities, and in the field of education. Within the field of natural sciences, mathematics and statistics, men to women representation is relatively balanced. However, in the domains of arts and humanities as well as education, women comprise the vast majority. Employed people constitute the highest proportion, 88%, among those who have graduated in the field of information and communication technologies. This field of education predominantly attracts men, representing almost 4/5 of the total population who have graduated there. We also see substantial shares of employment in the fields of business administration and law, social science, journalism and information, as well as engineering, manufacturing and construction. Women constitute most of the people in the two fields I've just mentioned, while the men represent the substantial proportion among those with a tertiary degree in the field of engineering. On the next slide, please. Eurostat also computes the so-called overqualification rate. This is a rate calculated for employed persons with a tertiary level of education. It shows what proportion of these people are employed in occupations for which a tertiary level of education is normally not required. In the EU, the overqualification rate stood at 22% in the year 2022. This rate peaks in Spain, Greece, and Cyprus, surpassing 30% of the employed population with tertiary education in those countries. On the other hand, Luxembourg reported the lowest rate at 6%, with Sweden, Denmark, and Czechia following with also relatively low proportions of overqualifications. Thank you very much for your attention. This was from my side. Now I can give the floor to the next presenter.
Thank you very much, Dilian. And as you said, let's move on to Andrea Advinger from Eurostat. Andrea, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and hi, John. Yes, I am also from Eurostat. I work in Unit G4, which deals with digitalization and innovation. And there I am responsible for the survey on the use of ICT in households and by individuals. And today we will see how we actually measure digital skills in the EU with the help of this survey. So on the next slide, please. Yes, exactly. So our main tool to do this is the digital skills indicator. It is based on the digital competence framework for citizens, which was developed in the European Commission. And as Dilian has said before, of course, we cannot easily actually test people's digital skills. So we measure this by proxy, by saying, okay, we have a list of different activities, and if people performed them in the last 3 months, then we assume that they are also actually able to do so. The digital skills indicator is composed of 5 different dimensions, and each one has several different component activities. So the dimensions are information and data literacy. So activities here include finding information, fact-checking this information. Then there is digital content creation, using Word, using Excel, writing code, communication and collaboration, so writing emails, instant messaging, problem solving, online learning, or also changing the settings in a program. And then lastly, there is the safety skills, so managing access to personal data or changing cookie settings, for example. And then as each of those dimensions are evaluated, if one has at least one activity in each dimension, it is considered at least basic digital skills. Now, this is a very important concept to remember, because the digital skills are part of the Commission's Digital Decade Key Performance Indicators. So we have the goal that until 2030, at least 80% of the EU population will have at least basic digital skills. On the next slide, we will be able to see how we are doing here. As you can see, there is still some way to go. Some countries are close to this 80% target. The EU average is 54%, so a bit in the middle, and some other countries still have further to go. If we talk of the general population, this means people aged 16 to 74 here. So that is our survey population age range. Important to note, the data is from 2021. New data on 2023 will be published in December. So please watch out and stay tuned and check our websites, because there will be updates. Now on the next slide, I will go into slightly more detail. the people with at least basic digital skills, as I said, the general population, we are at 54%, a bit away from this 80% target still. However, if we look at different factors, we can see that it varies quite a lot by socio-demographic influences. So the first one for sure is the level of formal education. You can see people with high formal education, 79% of them have at least basic digital skills. So we have almost reached this target. On the other hand, people with low or no formal education are only at 32%. So formal education also in other areas than digital has a huge impact on whether people have digital skills or not. Then another factor is age. People always talk of digital natives and how they are able to find their way around the internet. And in our data, we can for sure see that as well. So people aged 16 to 29, 71% of them have at least basic digital skills. And with those aged 55 to 74, it is only 35%. So there is a clear impact of the age dimension as well. And then lastly, there is also an interesting divide between the people living in cities, where the number is 61% of people with at least basic digital skills, and people living in rural areas where it is 46%. So it is very interesting when trying to improve this level of digital skills. We can see that there are many socio-demographic factors at play, and it is not simple to just improve. There are many other influences as well. That concludes it from my side. Back to you, John. You are muted.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and very good to hear about the digital skills and the ICT background. Now I'd like to move on to another Eurostat colleague, that's Sabrina Iannazzoni. Sabrina, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for welcoming me. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Sabrina, and I work together with Gillian in the unit F3 of Eurostat, dealing with social statistics and labor market, and specifically on the analysis for the labor force survey. Most of my data come actually from our ad hoc subject module on job skills, which contains some additional variables that are not included in the regular data set. Next slide, please. Yes, so in this on this slide, to start with, we can see the percentage of employed people who use digital technologies for work purposes, of course, during their working time and in different types of job. So in a few words, we talk about the time spent on working on digital devices, such as the computer, the tablet, phablet, or smartphone. As we can observe in this slide, in 2022, nearly 30% of employed people aged 15-74 reporting using digital devices for the majority of their working time. And for both men and women, we can also observe the highest percentage in the age group 30-44. In the age group 60-74, more than 30% of employed people reporting using digital technology for work tasks for none of their working time. Next slide, please. Yes, then when we look at this map, we have an overview across the European Union countries, and we do see that the highest share of employed people spending all or most of their working time on digital devices can be found in Luxembourg, with a percentage of 47% of employed people, followed by the Netherlands and Sweden, both 41%. Meanwhile, the lowest share were recorded in Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece. All the three countries are around 12%. Next slide. This slide shows the proportions of men and women spending at least half of their working time on internal and external communications. So we refer to the interaction with people from the same organization and outside the organization in the main or last job. Interaction can be face-to-face, by phone, or by video chatting. All of them are taken into account in the analysis. When looking at the figure here, we can easily observe that for the total of men and women, working time spent on tasks involving internal communication is significantly greater than that for external communication. And overall, we can also see that more women than men dedicated at least half of their working time to communication. Women spend much more time than men on external communication for work purposes. And at the same time, the percentage of employed men which allocate time for internal communication exceed that of external communication. So there are differences between men and women on the time allocated to internal and external communication at work. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and this provides an overview of the distribution of levels of repetitiveness by levels of standardization. So standardization in this context measures the extent to which the respondent to the survey has to follow a strictly defined procedure. So this contributes to assessing the degree of autonomy on the tasks at work. Repetitiveness, we mean to what extent work tasks of the respondent are repetitive. For example, if the respondent frequently implements similar tasks in the same way without variation or changes. Here we can see overall that these two variables are actually very closely related. We can observe that very high or high levels of repetitiveness of tasks, nearly actually 62% for high level of standardization. And at the same time, low levels of repetitiveness is found for low levels of standardization. And that's all from my side. I give the floor to the next speaker.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. So over to Denis Lethien from Eurostat. Denis, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am Denis Lethien, working in labor market statistics. And I will present first usage of a new data source, which are web scrape data. Next slide, please. So Eurostat has started collecting data directly from the web, namely what we call online job advertisements. And those are posted by employers willing to recruit on the web. So you can see on this slide how our IT programs can extract information from those online job advertisements. So first you see, in fact, on the top right, you can see the position here, data scientist. This is the occupation. You can see below the location, Luxembourg in this example, then the date, and directly relevant for our webinar, you can see on the bottom left, you can see the text from which the programs extract the keywords that are mapped with a classification of skills. So this is the way programs can count the frequency of occupations and the frequency of skills which are posted on the web and then derive statistics. You will see an illustration in the next slide. So here, so this is still, the next slide is about the most frequent occupations which have been counted on all online job advertisements in the EU in year 2022. You will find as the top one software developers, which represents 3% of all online job advertisements posted on the web that year. You will find in number 3 system analysts, so still IT occupations, But we have also very different domains in the top 10. You can find positions related to applied research and development. For instance, you have engineering professionals, which rank high. And number 4, you have R&D managers. And then another domain, which is marketing and sales. You will find shop sales assistants, which are very much sought on the web, number 2. You have qualified workers like freight handlers, number 5. And finally, we have accountants and administrators. So really a mix of very different occupations, very different domains, which rank in the top 10 of all occupations which have been web scraped from online job advertisements. Turning to skills in the next slide. Here we have displayed the keywords which have been extracted from online job advertisements, and the fonts are proportionate to the frequency of those keywords. So what shows up at first sight is that are what we call the general skills or the soft skills. You will see, for instance, adapt to change, which is massively represented in online job advertisements. You have working teams, which is also a key criterion to recruit staff. Of course, you will find also general IT skills, like use Microsoft Office. So this is the first idea of what was found on the web for all kinds of job advertisements, all EU countries, so really a general overview, let's say. But we want to go further. So in the next slide, I would like to first explain that this is still work in progress. It's a new source that we are exploring. And for instance, the plans are to be more specific, to separate different categories of skills, to be able to isolate the general skills from the specific skills and from the digital. So this is what we are working on at the moment. We have another strand of work, which is to relate skills with occupations. Of course, skills are very much depend on the occupation. So if you want to be specific, provide information on specific skills, you have to enter via the occupation. So our aim would be to display the most wanted skills for any given occupation. And that's also what we are currently working on. Finally, for more information on labor demand in general, I can only recommend that you consult our article on job vacancy statistics. You will find there the word cloud that I've shown, the top 10 occupations, but also more general information on labor demand in Europe, by country, by mass industry. So I think it's a good entry point in the labor demand side, the demand side of the labor market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Denis. So we've come to the end of the presentations by the Eurostat presenters that you've just seen, and now we'll move into the question and answer part of our webinar. And indeed, I know that some of you have already been posting your questions onto Slido, and I do encourage you to keep posting questions. We won't be able to answer all of them in the live session, but those that we can't get to, we'll certainly follow up in writing, of course. So for the question and answers, I'm joined by a panel of all of the speakers that you've heard so far during the webinar. There will also be ready on call in case there are important questions for them to answer. Didier Dupré, who's the head of unit of Eurostat's Labour Market and Lifelong Learning unit, and Ricardo Gatto, who is the team leader for labour force survey methodology and analysis. So I'd like to welcome Didier and Ricardo as well to the panel. So let's start looking at some questions that have arrived. The first question to kick us off: what are the hot skills in Europe in the area of IT? Are there any specific countries where the search for these hot skills is especially high? Perhaps, Denis, you could help us with that one. Please go ahead.
Yes, with pleasure. So I already presented a first idea of what are the hot skills, and this covers also IT. However, this is not specific enough. In the word cloud, you have seen there is Microsoft Office as general competencies. But if you want to go further, we will need probably to, as I already indicated, to separate IT skills from the others and also relate them to specific occupations. So this is indeed in our plans. Concerning the question about countries' data, this is also needed. Currently, we display the World Cloud for the EU as a whole, but of course, we intend to distinguish countries in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denis. I mean, I think you answered another question which has come up in Slido, which is what are the hot ICT skills or profiles in case of which the candidate market is scarce? Are there any country tendencies? Is there something you'd like to add on this question?
With pleasure, yes, because this notion of scarcity is not exactly the frequency. Here, you have to relate the number of job advertisements with the number of employed persons in that sectors or for that skills. And for this kind of question, we will probably need to combine data from the web, online job advertisements, with data from the LFS on the number of employees working in that occupation. And from this, we hope to derive indicators on labor shortages, which will be more relevant because it will really give an idea of the labor market tightness, which is what economists would like to see. Thank you.
Indeed, Denis, I'm sure that policymakers and analysts will be very interested to hear about this area. Perhaps let's move on to another question. Which sectors or specific occupations will be in demand in the 2030s and the 2040s? Didier, perhaps you could take this one, please.
Yes, thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. Well, actually, what we presented you and more generally, what does Eurostat is to make statistics that are at a certain point on time that, of course, can be repeated and set a series of photographies and show evolution. But we don't do forecast. We don't look to the future on hypotheses that actually are not shown by any data existing for the moment. So somehow we cannot really answer to this question. But of course, some people are working on this. First of all, I guess that the IT specialists are certainly thinking already in future technologies that may influence the future skills needed. But there are also institutions in the European Union and linked to the European institutions, for example, the Joint Research Center of the Commission. But I want to highlight in particular the role of CEDEFOP, which is the European Center for Development of Vocational Training. And they are working quite a lot on skills and the labor market, and they are looking at the 21st century workforce. So more generally, not only now, but what indeed will be the characteristics of the workforce in 10 years, in 15 years. And this is a good point, of course, to start thinking about what will be the skills in the same time in 10 or 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Didier. So even if the Eurostat statistics can't answer this kind of forecasting or projection, there are certainly other places that we can usefully go to learn about that. Let's move on to another question. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion about artificial intelligence these days. It's a very hot topic. So there's a very nice question here. What kind of skills per occupation would be replaced by artificial intelligence? So for that tricky question, I'll pass to Sabrina, please.
Thank you very much, with pleasure. So as Didier said, our data capture a specific situation in a time frame. So of course we cannot make a concrete prediction about the future. We could assume if, for example, we look at the variables we used and we presented in the job skills module in the labor force survey, we could assume that if we look at different variables, for example, the high level of repetitiveness, the high level of standardization, the use of digital devices, all of them gives us an idea of what is the degree of the job autonomy that a worker has. So what type of tasks can be one day replaced by artificial intelligence. We also have a variable that, for example, monitors the time spent on hard physical work. So then again, this could go into work that in the future can be complemented by artificial intelligence. However, with the data we have, we are not yet in the position of making an analysis on this, and it's more an assumption that yes, on future than data confirmed by the module at the moment.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. So there are some clues in our statistics in the way that you've explained, but of course, this is also an anticipation or a forecasting issue as well. Let's move on to another question, and please do keep entering your questions into Slido. We're having quite a busy morning with questions. For this one, what are the key industries or sectors experiencing the highest demand for specific skills in Europe? And here, perhaps, Dilian, you might like to help us out, please.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So, as was mentioned during the presentation of Sabrina, within our module 2022, we measured the working time dedicated to a specific task that entails a specific skill. And what we saw is that economic activities such as those related to IT, those related to professional and scientific activities, they had the highest shares at EU level of people spending all or most of their working time using digital devices, doing relatively complex calculations, and also reading work-related documents. So I think this answers more or less the question. More information on that could be seen in our article that we published in late June. It was called Employment Utilization of Job Skills. It's a Statistics Explained article. It could be checked there. It shows a specific graph related to this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dilian. So we know where we could go for more information on this. That's great. The next question I see is really not really a statistics question as such, but maybe it's a question that Julie could help us with. The question is that the questioner has a STEM American degree and is wondering what the chances of the American bachelor's diploma satisfying the EU job market. Julie, could you perhaps say something about that, please?
Yeah, I can have a go. I mean, first to say that STEM is such a very broad category. It covers, you know, a significant proportion of disciplines, and the demand in Europe is very much regionally based. So it would really depend upon which region you're looking to work in. So if you are a pharmacist, for example, then there would be demand in the north of Belgium. If you're a mechanical engineer, then there would be demand in the south of Germany, but much less so in the south of Portugal. So I think you really, in that spirit, need to look at that. And this is also why in statistics, I think the regional dimension of statistics is also very important on some of these questions. When you're looking at more local information on needs, I think there you would need to contact your local public employment service in the area that you would like to work in, because of course they will have much finer grained information and be in touch with the trends. And if you're looking at a regulated profession, so things like doctor, pilot, architect, etc., or if you need a formal recognition decision for some other reason, then you would need to contact the ENIC-NARIC Centre in the country that you're particularly interested in going to. So I hope that helps you.
Thank you very much, Julie. So let's perhaps head back into a statistical question. What is the approach of Eurostat to promote the results on national levels for development, especially, for example, in collaboration with NGOs in education and in education technology? Perhaps here, Didier, you can help us, please.
Yes, sure, John. Well, first of all, I would like very shortly, of course, but to remind a bit the structure in which we work. Eurostat is a bit at the top at the European level of the European statistical system, and the European statistical system is made by all the national statistical institute and even other bodies that nationally are responsible for collecting official statistics. And of course, all these bodies, and in particular the National Statistical Institute, are first, there are tools who collect the data. Eurostat do not collect directly the data, so all the data we have come from them, and they have it. And of course, they disseminate it. So the first part of the answer is that, of course, all these data are promoted and disseminated at national level by tools who collect them, and in particular, the National Statistical Institute. Now to work and to also at all level promote this dissemination and use of the data. In particular, you mentioned the academic world. We do work with the academic world. A part of our data is available directly to them in some special conditions which are dealt with, but they have the possibilities to access not only to what is published but all the data behind. And they do some analysis, and we promote that. We work with them, and we have a clear contact with them. We also promote the development of, let's say, statistical capacities, and in particular in the program which is called EMOS, which is a Master in Statistics at European level. So we do all these actions in order that indeed the academic world, which means also at national level, really work with all this data.
Thank you very much, Didier. So let's move on to another question. During the presentations, we heard about the influence of education and age on skills. So is there a gender gap in digital skills? For example, fewer women working with STEM. Andrea, perhaps you might take this one, please.
Yes, thank you, John. This is actually a very interesting question, because the answer is maybe not as clear-cut as one might intuitively think. Yes, there is a gender gap looking at the general overall population with the level of basic digital skills. So men overall tend to score slightly better. There's a gap of about 4 percentage points. However, if we look at the age groups in more detail, it's actually that women have a higher level of basic digital skills up until the age group of 44. And only if we go above is it that the order is reversed and men score better. So of course, this is a general individual level of digital skills that we talk about. So it doesn't necessarily translate to participation in STEM jobs or the ICT sector or something. But I think it is quite interesting because, as I said, the intuitive reaction from following media reports or something might maybe be a different one, but it is not as clear cut. And other factors that I mentioned in my presentation have a much bigger impact.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So we've got another interesting question here. Are there any notable trends or changes in the demand for skills post-pandemic? So Denis, could you help us with this?
Yes, so on this question, it's slightly a bit premature because we are working on it, but the good news is that web data have started being collected in 2019. So we have good prospects that in the coming months we will be able to display the most wanted skills in 2019 and 2023. We hope that in March next year we should be able. And by comparing both, we hope to have a good view on the labor market on skills before and after the COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denis. So the jury is out a bit on the statistics there, but they're coming, and that's also extremely important to know. There's also a further question, which is what sectors display the highest job vacancy rates? Again, perhaps I can call on you, Denis.
Yes, with pleasure. So here we are more talking about existing official statistics. We have a long experience with the job vacancy rates. We publish it every quarter as what we call a Euro indicator. And if you consult our news release, you will see also by a NAS industry what are the job vacancy rates. So if you look at our latest issue, you will find that, in fact, the top NAS activities, which are in labor shortage, let's say, are IT sector, of course, food and accommodation to some extent, looking for waiters, for cooks, and last but not least, also temporary work agencies. Because recently there was a general, let's say, labor market tightness. Employers in Europe after the COVID had difficulties to recruit in general. So this is, it's not a surprise that in fact they go through temporary work agencies to find the staff that they cannot recruit through other channels. So I would list those three sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denis. I would encourage further questions in Slido if that's okay. I mean, we had a question which I think has already been answered. The question said, what role does education attainment play in addressing skill shortages? And clearly it does so. And I think Dilian presented a slide on that. So that's maybe something that we can have a look at. Perhaps a further question in my mind. I saw that there's an educational field called education within the skills, and that sort of seems quite interesting to me. The education approach is this something that somebody would like to comment on? Perhaps I can call upon Denis again to mention something on this, please.
Maybe I can answer this one.
Yeah, probably Dilian is a better place, probably.
Dilian, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So this is indeed the name of this educational field is also education, and maybe it sounds a bit bizarre for people who are not familiar with the terminology. So this is the this type of data is based on the International Standard Classification of Education, and namely, this classification separates all the educational areas into different fields, and one of these fields is called education. And these fields include plenty of specialties and majors, but they're mostly related to training for preschool teachers, for example, also teacher training with or without any subject specialization, and so on. So basically, there are trained people who are to become teachers.
Oh, thank you, Dilian. That's very clear. So training people to become teachers. Perhaps a broader reflection, a little bit about the next developments in skills statistics. I don't know if somebody from the panel could give a reflection on perhaps what's coming in the future. Denis mentioned, of course, that we will be getting more and more statistics to see what's been happening post-COVID. But what about future developments of job skills statistics? Would anybody like to say something about that? Perhaps Didier, would you like to say something? I believe you're muted, Didier.
I apologize. Yes, in the context of the labor force survey, we have made this module in 2022, which was very useful to answer these questions. It's not a priori something to be repeated systematically, but of course in future we can envisage to have further photographies. I think in terms of skills, for the moment, because it's something very horizontal, you have seen we have various sources, we have various approaches. While certainly for the ICT part, the ICT survey, Andrea presented the result is a source which will be here and which will follow all the evolution. I think the part that presented by Denis, which is to look at other sources, not at traditional statistics, where the subtleties that were asked in different moments, in different questions, are difficult maybe to catch via traditional surveys. Would be so going to these new sources, web scraping or the private sources could be certainly something we can think in future. I would like to add, in addition, that we have a source of data which was not presented today, but which is the side of training. So here we have some surveys, of course, the continuing vocational training survey. We have the adult education survey, which are not every year, which are every 5-6 years, but nevertheless also give us regularly some photographies on what the businesses develop in terms of training for the employees, or what adults are doing in addition to their initial education to develop further skills. And this is also an important source which was not presented today, because we focus on the skills as they are and as they are, let's say, present in the population and in the different economic sectors, but which is something that is, of course, important. I mentioned in one answer the CDFOP, which is precisely working on vocational training, and these sources are also an important aspect for further statistics and information on the domain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Didier. And perhaps Christine, you might want to complement as a closing remark. Please, Christine.
Yes, maybe also a word on what was actually mentioned in the opening by Julie. You spoke about satellite accounts on education and training, and here this demand, we are very well aware it exists, but we are still going to have a far way to go to really have European accounts on education and training. But it is part of the update of the system of national accounts, which we expect by 2025. And there's work also ongoing. So we follow the international standards that were developed by the UNECE on that point. And some member states have started working to produce such accounts. But yes, I'm afraid I still have to tell you that we don't have them yet, and but they are still in our radar for European statistics, and we are working towards. Thank you, John. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Christine. It's good to know there's a pipeline of work coming up to improve our offer on statistics. So thank you very much, everybody, all the presenters and those who have participated in the Q&A. We're coming towards the end of our session now. It's been very lively. Thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. Even if we haven't managed to get to your question, we will certainly respond in writing. So you'll receive a response on your questions if you haven't got one already. There will be a feedback survey, which you can find through Slido. So please do give us feedback if you'd like to comment on the webinar, on the points discussed today. We very much welcome it. So as a few closing remarks, just to say that this webinar on job skills is, of course, part of a series of webinars. And indeed, in the area of should we say, labour market statistics, there'll be a further webinar on the 9th of November, which will be on unemployment. So if you're interested in that, please do feel free to join us on the 9th of November. Otherwise, once again, thank you very much to all the presenters, to the panelists, and to all those who have asked questions. So I wish everybody a good rest of the day, and when it arrives, a good weekend. Goodbye, everybody.